Okay, so picking up where we left off, we were talking about Alan Freed, how it came to be that he coined the phrase rock and roll music, where he got the idea from. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to watch a couple of videos. The first one are just the top 50 songs from the top 10 songs from the 1950s, and then the other one is going to be about Elvis because you can't talk about rock and roll music and not mention Elvis.
I have asthma, one of many pieces in my life. So when my asthma symptoms kept coming back on my long-term control medicine, I talked.
Well, we always had a lot of fun with this one.
The birth of cool and the birth of rock and roll. Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we'll be counting down our picks for the top 10 Billboard chart-topping rock songs of the 1950s. For this list, we focused on rock songs that reached #1 on the Billboard charts while making a definitive mark on 50s pop culture. What is now known as the Billboard Hot 100 did not exist for the majority of the 50s, so for the purposes of this list, we're only considering those rock songs that topped either the top 100, the best sellers in stores, or, after August 1958, the Hot 100. Though a song like Great Balls of Fire is one of the best-selling singles of all time, it only topped the country chart in the US, and therefore it will not be making our list.
Oh, baby, drive me crazy. It's the craziest great balls of fire.
Number 10, at the hop, Danny and the Juniors. It's a rock and roll doo-wop classic and our number 10 pick. The song describes the dance scene popular with the teenagers of the 1950s, and thanks to its fast tempo and bouncy melody, the single no doubt took the music industry by storm.
Let's go to the hot. Let's go.
Hitting #1 on the top 100 as well as the R&B bestsellers list, At the Hop proved that Danny and the Juniors had an enormous crossover hit on their hands.
Let's go to the hot. Oh, baby, let's go to the hot. Let's go to the hot.
Number 9, Sleepwalk, Santo and Johnny. A rare instrumental hit on the Billboard Hot 100, this 1959 track was written by brothers Santo and Johnny Farina after waking up one night at 2 in the morning. Featuring some killer slide guitar and a bass line that is as dreamy as dreams themselves, Sleepwalk is an early precursor to the surf rock genre, as well as a timeless classic that just never gets old. Covered by artists old and new, there's no denying the influence that Sleepwalk has had on the rock genre, as well as the influence that Santo and Johnny has had on the music industry.
Then your love will hold you round, round, round in your heart's a song.
Number 8, Round and Round, Perry Como.
Go spinning round, if you found what you've been dreaming of.
A song that you just can't help but tap your feet to, Perry Como created a pop-inspired phenomenon. Artists.
Get floated down, 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 and the tide's so strong. You're too hot to find, hold it on. The one you found, oh, you know, it's a little love. Well, since my baby left,
Number 7, Heartbreak Hotel, Elvis Presley.
well, it's down at the end of Lonely Street at Heartbreak Hotel. I'll make you so lonely, baby.
The voice, the look, the moves. Elvis Presley had it all back in the mid-50s, And it was this song that caused parents and their children to shake their head for completely different reasons. Inspired by a news report of a suicide note reading, "I Walk a Lonely Street," Heartbreak Hotel eventually inspired a young up held the top spot for 8. Number 6, All I Have to Do Is Dream, the Everly Brothers.
Dream, dream, dream when I want you.
Who doesn't love this song? Well, according to the Billboard Charts of 1958, nobody, as All I Have to Do Is All Time, which Stephen Colbert and Elvis Costello once performed live on a 2010 episode of The Colbert Report.
Oh, I need you so that I could die. I love you so.
Written by Felice and Boudleaux Bryant, All I Have to
Well, that'll be the day when you say goodbye. Yeah, that'll be the day when you make me cry.
Number 5, That'll Be the Day, the Crickets.
Cause that'll be the day when I die. Well, you give me all your loving and your hurdle, darling.
Inspired by the John Wayne film The Searchers, Buddy Holly and his band collectively wrote a love song about a man's cynical take on his girl's threats.
Well, that'll be the day when you say goodbye. Yeah, that'll be the day when you make me cry.
However, due to the lead singer known as the Beatles,
That'll be the day when you say goodbye. Yeah, that'll be the day when you make me cry. You say you're gonna leave, you know it's a lie. 'Cause that'll be the day when I die.
Number 4, Jailhouse Rock, Elvis Presley.
Walking through a party in the county jail. The prison band was there, they began to wail.
For the King of Rock's third feature film, the songwriting duo of Lieber and Stoller penned a comedic 2.5-minute number that became a definitive Elvis hit. Number 3, Tequila, the Champs. It's been proven that Americans will completely lose their mind anytime a rock song references alcohol, and in 1958, this track made a nation of rebels without a cause to get down to a sexy mambo beat. You don't hear many people talking about the musical history of the Champs today.
This one's called Rock Around the Clock. Bill Haley. 1, 2, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock.
Number 2, Rock Around the Clock, Bill Haley and his Comets.
12 o'clock, rock, we're gonna rock around the clock tonight. What's that right, sir?
In a time when America was on the verge of a cultural revolution, this song infused an unknown groove into the bodies of millions. Hey, it was 1954, and when Rock Around the Clock hit the radio, teenagers weren't exactly hip to shaking their hips, and you damn well know their parents weren't either. This is where we normally have honorable mentions, but there aren't any this time around. So on to our top pick.
You ain't nothing but a hound dog.
Number 1, Hound Dog, Elvis Presley.
Well, you ain't never caught a rabbit and you ain't no friend of mine.
In the early 50s, a couple of teenage songwriters
Okay, so there's the top songs from the 50s. Now, I'd like to show you this clip on Elvis, but really don't have enough time with, only have 15 minutes to make this. So we're going to move on. We talked about the generation gap already and how that came to be. Rock and roll really helped create this divide between parents and kids. Parents just couldn't understand why kids like this music so much. You see this poster right here of James Dean. That's from the movie Rebel Without a Cause. In the movie, James Dean was really a loner. He did his own thing, he acted his own way, and he really became kind of the poster child, especially for young men of the 1950s, to start to act out this way. All these things combine. We know what I mentioned earlier as far as parents wanting a better life for their kids than what they had. And so therefore it meant they gave them more freedoms. And then the introduction of rock and roll music and then the introduction of actors like James Dean really helped create this generation gap. And then finally, we talk about the hidden society. Last week, we talked about the affluent society and what affluency means. And if a person comes from affluency, it means that they come from wealth. But not everybody in the United States enjoyed that wealth. You had 30 million people that live below the poverty line. The poverty line is a number that our federal government puts out, and basically what it says is that a family is going to need at least 1/3 of their income to buy food that helps them meet the national daily requirement for your 4 basic food groups. And then, depending on the size of the family, a larger family is going to have more money coming in, a smaller family, less money. But in a nutshell, that's kind of how they create the poverty line. And so if you don't have enough money coming in, you're not meeting those national daily requirements, and therefore you're said to be living in poverty. Well, who is most susceptible to living in poverty? Single mothers, the elderly. People really didn't, when it came to retirement, people had no clue how much money they had to have put away. They really thought Social Security was going to be their safety net, and living on fixed income is something that people were not very familiar with, and they had no idea that it just wasn't going to be enough money, and they didn't have enough money put away. Minority immigrants definitely, especially Hispanics, because people felt that those individuals would do the same work for less money. Why pay them more money? It might be more money than they were making in the country that they came from. However, the cost of living here is going to be more. So even though it looks like on the surface you're making more money, in the long run you're really not. Inner city residents, we talked about this last week, as people were leaving the cities and they were moving to the suburbs. The only ones that stayed back in the cities were the ones that couldn't afford to move. So therefore, when businesses went, oftentimes they shut down the business they had in the city, they moved it to the suburbs. And for people that were working in those businesses, now they didn't have a job. Now they're unemployed. And if you look at areas of the U.S. today where crime is bad, these are areas where unemployment is very high as well. The two, unfortunately, go hand in hand. So inner cities, high unemployment, high crime rates, and then as we're going to see, there's also going to be a large number of people using drugs as well. The area of Appalachia, this is in the Appalachian Mountains, Tennessee, Kentucky, the Western Carolinas, up through West Virginia, Pennsylvania. These were some of the poorest areas of the United States back during this time. They still continue to be some of the poorest areas of the United States today. And then Native Americans, and we could have an entire unit on the impact our government has had on Native Americans, and why it is that a large percentage of them live the type of lifestyle that they do, but we really don't have enough time for that in these notes, let alone in this unit. Basically, for most Americans, it was out of sight, out of mind. If they didn't see these people, then they didn't really care about them. It's not until the presidencies of JFK and LBJ that they really start to make a concerted effort towards helping people in the inner cities and creating departments like HUD, the Department of Housing and Urban Development. So this is it for your notes, and remember, you have the test on Thursday. We will review for the test on Wednesday. Tomorrow is tic-tac-toe trivia game.